All right, guys. Really excited. We're here for another episode of Martial Praxis. I'm joined by this time again by Miles Kessler. Thank you so much for coming on this time.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Um, this episode, the desire to film this episode on my end really spun out of listening to some conversations that you had produced a while ago, called the
Hmm.
Shuhari Dialogues. And I
Yep.
was listening to these, and immediately I was like, wow, this concept, it resonated so much with me. And I just felt like this is something I need to get out there for people who are in my circle, maybe more for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people, but also for people from all martial arts who have a relationship with their teacher and a relationship with this cycle of development. So thank you so much for being here and for being willing to do this. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate you reaching out, James. I've been following you on social media, and I watch all your different your videos of all your different martial arts that you're practicing, and it's cool. It's nice to see your interests and your engagement with the different styles, different schools.
Yeah, it's funny because I think sometimes I do run the risk of like not spending enough time with one thing to really understand it. But
Hmm.
there's also just something really cool about comparing some of these styles, especially when they're related. I mean, I've just been having such an interesting time looking at the relationship between like Daito Ryu, Kito Ryu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu
Wow.
styles, Aikido, and looking and seeing like where these
Hmm.
techniques came and different strategies for accomplishing the same thing. So there's something really interesting by that you can gain by kind of looking horizontally, especially if it's more in the context of study rather than training.
Well, do you have one core school or one core style that you practice or your main thing?
Yeah, I mainly practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then I tend to have
Okay.
one other thing that I'm like kind of working on at a particular time. So right now, since
Hmm.
I got my Shodan and Tamiki Aikido, I've been really focused on Daito Ryu.
Oh, nice, nice. Who are you doing Dai Do with? You're in
Howard
New York, right?
Pocket.
Oh, God, I know. I don't know Howard. We've stayed in contact. We've had a little bit of a contact through Facebook, through Messenger, back
Yeah,
and
yeah,
forth.
yeah.
And
He's
he has
really,
some
really amazing
relatives.
teacher and super nice guy. I mean, so easy
Yeah,
to
I've
talk to
heard
and
that
work
from a
with.
few other people. I think he has some relatives here in Israel, so we just made contact one day, and every now and then we say hi. I think his dojo just got flooded not too long ago.
The roof came in, but it's fixed.
Right, right. That's
So
cool. We'll tell him
maybe,
send him my greetings next time you see him.
yeah, I absolutely will. Maybe we could start like if you could just give a brief overview of this idea of Shuhari and maybe
Well, do you want to mention why you're interested in Shuhari? We were talking about it before the
yeah, yeah,
recording.
absolutely. Yeah, sure, sure. So
Then I'll dive in. Then I'll
my
add to it.
interest in this really comes because I've had a number of teachers in different arts, and this dynamic of having this kind of structured shoe phase, right, where you're kind of you link up, in my story, right? Like I remember, like for example, with Tamiki Aikido, right? Like I met my teacher. We were actually co-workers. We started training together. We were like really, really close. He started taking me to all these events, to tournaments. We were training, going things together, and then as like 1 or 2 years of that went by, right? Like people started to be like, man, Jamie's really good. Jamie's, he's doing this, he's doing that. He looks really good. And I had other arts that I was doing. I was working in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, and then it
Hmm.
was like he almost started to get threatened by that, right? And our relationship started to kind of go through this weird degradation. And I experienced something like this with, I would say, 4 out of 5 of my main teachers. And
Hmm.
when I was listening to your conversation with Toby Threadgill, I was like, oh my God, this is this ha phase, this need to differentiate or to in some cases, if the teacher's ego is a little bit strong, right, you need to separate from the
Hmm.
teacher, is actually just a part of the cycle of development. And
It's a developmental move. Yeah, right.
yeah, and it just blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, there's actually like a model or like some kind of thing out there that describes this experience that I've been going through over and over again. And I even could see it in myself with my own students where they would start developing in a certain way. And instead of recognizing it as a movement from the shu phase to like the ha phase, like kind of like that evolution out of the conformity to kata or the strict rules that you give them in their own idiosyncrasies kind of coming out and them wanting to differentiate themselves from the teacher, right? Like looking at them
Right.
doing that and being like, ah, what's wrong with you? Like you're breaking all the rules, you're getting worse, right? When
Yeah.
in reality, they're actually just getting ready to step out of the box of just being needing pedagogy, basically, needing to be
Right.
taught like a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Shuhari is this. It's interesting because not too many people in Japan know the term Shuhari, and
Huh.
not too many martial artists know the term Shuhari. It's basically three stages of mastery. And I think it originally, like way back Edo period, it came out of, if I'm not mistaken, Kabuki or something like that.
No theater. So I actually just
No
started
theater. That was
researching
it.
this
No
as a
theater.
result.
There you go.
There's a no
Yep.
treatise. I have it in my backpack. I should have actually brought it up because the figure is
Exactly.
important. But yes,
Right.
it has to it comes out of the no training.
And you'll hear about it in sword making,
Yes.
and then you'll hear about it sometimes in the Koryu, the
Mhm.
traditional martial arts, not
Yes.
so much in modern martial arts, in the
Yep.
traditional martial arts. Shu-ha-ri represent the three stages of mastery, which is conformity, separation, and then integration or transcendence or creating your own style, or creating your own art, I should say. But even though you won't hear about it very much, it's happening all the time. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you're doing. You know, when you learn a car, you go through Shuhari. When you learn
Yes.
how to ski, you go through Shuhari. When you learn how to make a sword or make sushi, you go through a thing of Shuhari. And the more I suppose there can be a natural movement through those phases, but the more clear-cut, structured, and understanding the transition of those stages, the more explicit it is, the smoother the development goes.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because so I think that this is like there's a natural impetus and the natural like creative logos drives you in this direction, right? Like you're gonna first
Exactly.
need this conformity,
Exactly.
right? And then you evolve. But a lot of times if the environment, meaning the teacher, the school, whatever else isn't right, I feel like a lot of people get stuck like in the middle of the ha phase, right? Like
Well,
you're gonna separate from your teacher and then you maybe don't ever make contact with what you need to evolve fully unless you're able to find it in yourself.
you can be stuck at any stage.
Yeah.
Now, and you might have more in your kind of experience, you might see it more in the hostage, which is fair enough. It could say something about the art you're in, the teachers you're with. It could say something about you personally. Who knows? But getting stuck can happen at any stage. It can even happen in the Ri, which is the transcendent stage. You can
Huh.
just transcend, and then you're creating your own art, and people come to train with you, and they've got nothing to work with because you don't
Mm,
give them the shoe structure. So
wow.
maybe we talk about these three stages in a little bit
Yeah.
more of a in a step-by-step way to make it clear what they are. Before we speak about them, maybe I'll just say my own experience. I never heard about Shuhari. I was just doing I did some. I was kind of like you when I was young. I did judo, I did kung fu, I did some karate, I did some iaido and kendo, and something else was in there, I don't remember. But then at around 22, I started Aikido, and I found my jam, that was my path, and it just in every way it kind of suited me. And I went full on in it. And I went through these stages of Shuhari, which is the first stage is conformity, where you kind of, you become a representation of that style. The Ha is it's really means to separate, but it's really the application stage
Yeah.
where you take the kata, you start to apply it to real life. The Ri is the transcendent stage where you kind of go beyond. You become your own so-called master. I was going through that. By the way, those three stages, simple to say, but it could be 15, 20 years that it takes to go through that stuff. Yeah.
Well,
I
there's
was
also
going,
a weird, like I always think of these things as sort of having this fractal nature where like you have
great.
very
You're,
short
you're
cycles
ahead of
of
the game.
Shuhari, but then at the same time, there's these really long ones, right, that are happening on a
Okay.
much bigger.
Maybe put a flag in the fractal. Let's bring that back in at the
Yeah,
end
absolutely.
because it's super
Absolutely.
important what you're saying, and it's a pretty, it already says a lot about the way you're looking at it. To see a fractal, you have to be through it. You
Yeah.
can't see like on your first movement through it, you won't see fractals. When
Yeah,
you've gone
exactly.
through it, when you've gone through it and you start to kind of do it again, It could be in another martial art. It could be a new stage in your own development in the
Yeah.
same martial art. You'll start to see fractals. Fractals is like fractals are wisdom that
Hmm.
comes after you've integrated the Shuhari at least once. At least
And,
once.
and my one question just about this, and this has to do with the Murabashi concept, right? Like the return, right?
Explain the concept. Is that from
Well,
Daito
it's
Ryu?
something that I've read coming up with in reference to Shu-ha-ri, which is that like there's sort of this
Where'd you read that? That's interesting. I never heard
notion.
it.
I'll send it over to you. It's called Murabashi. And basically it's this idea that there's like a return home that like
Okay.
the cycle. It's a lot like the calligraphy you have back there, right? Like the ring that the
Yeah, right,
beginning is
right.
the end and the end is the beginning,
Where
and
did you
that.
read this? I'm quite
Oh,
curious
man,
where you got
I
it.
don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll find it for you, and I'll also make sure I put it in the show notes. So if people wanna
Awesome.
look at
Yeah,
it,
great.
they can.
Murabashi, like Mura being like your home village, Bashi the
Murabashi.
bridge,
Yeah, I don't know. And the funniest thing
maybe.
is that my Aikido sensei, he had a stroke when he was younger, and he has a problem where
Mhm.
every once in a while words get transposed, and a lot of times I'll think that it was something he's saying is nonsense for years, and then I'll realize that he really meant something by it. And one of the things forever when he talks about Musashi, he always says Murabashi, and I always just thought he was mispronouncing Musashi. And then after all this time to come and realize that this Murabashi is a real thing and that he's actually been referencing something this whole time,
Okay.
I
All
was like,
right.
wow, this is something. So I'll find
Okay.
it for you and I'll send it over.
That's great. Yeah. So let's go back to the thread that I was on.
Yes.
I was going through this myself, but I didn't know it. And I had good teachers and I had good relationships with my teachers where I was lucky that it kind of smoothly went. My teachers, occasionally my teacher had to kind of put me in my place if I was trying to jump above my belly button, whatever, and that's fine. That was always a humbling experience. I was never so ego driven that I didn't. I'd submit. I would submit because I wanted to learn from these teachers, and I had some amazing teachers. But I was going through this, and then when I was probably around Sandan, maybe, yeah, probably Sandan, I was living in Japan, training like hell. This was back in the 80s, 90s. No internet. I was in the countryside, no TV, no whatever. I'd have to get the newspaper once a week. I was just reading tons. I would, go back to the States. I'd buy a bunch of books. I'd come back, and so I was learning, training hard, but also really training the mind as well, training the brain, I should say. And I came across this term Shuhari first. I suppose I saw it here and there, but if you Google Shuhari, you'll either find my stuff. Well, I guess you'll find my stuff because I've been writing about it for a long time. But you usually find something that like from business or from sword making, and they give three tiny paragraphs of what Shu is, what Ha is, what Ri is, and that's fine. But it's not very deep and not very in depth. It's kind of just a. But the first time I read about it in a way that made sense was in a book called The Way of the Joe by Pascal. What's his name? Pascal Krieger. He's a contemporary of Donald
Don
Draeger.
Draper. Yeah.
Contemporary of Donald Draeger. He's a Swiss man, French Swiss, and he wrote a book called The Way of the Joe. It's from I think Shindo Musoryu. I believe that's the style that he studied. And in there, it's an amazing book. You can't buy it anymore. I've got a PDF copy, James. I'll send it to you. It's
Yes.
you're gonna love it. It's really, really, really good.
I
Because he
if
lived in Japan for years and he'd
I
he'd kind
spend
of integrated
hundreds
all
of
this stuff.
dollars on these books, like I'm always like,
Oh no, I know.
I'll
I
find
do
one of
know.
them and I'll be like,
I do
okay,
know.
like this month I'm
I
gonna
do know.
use
I've
my
got a
credit
first
card.
edi- let me just show I've got a first edition of I think it's called The Way of Judo
Oh man.
by Moshe Feldenkrais.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was,
That's
this is back in the 30s. He wrote this book,
yeah.
and I have one of the original ones. Well, anyways, first edition. Okay, so back to the book Way of the Joe. It's a great book. There's a lot of they bring in a lot of the Budo concepts, tons of Budo concepts. It was really, and I was loving it because I was in Japan studying Eniwama Aikido, and we were just full on training, but there wasn't a whole kind of Koryu, traditional Japanese teaching that came along with it. And I
Yeah,
came across, I
that's
saw.
gone from that's not really there in those arts. Even in Daito Ryu, you have like a little bit of it, but it's not like really had that old Koryu style.
Depends on the school. Depends on the school. Like Toby Threadgill.
Yes.
I'm probably going to
That's
get it wrong, but Takamoto
Takamura
Ha,
Ha Shindo Yoshinru.
something like that. Yeah, I always get it wrong. Forgive me, everybody. It's a tremendous. Look, Toby's a great teacher, and it's an amazing martial art. But they have a strong a teaching of I don't know if it's an oral tradition or there's some scrolls that you get, but there's a lot of the Kodyu secret teachings that were passed down through it, not just the training, but the teachings. Other
Yes.
schools you won't see it, and sometimes the main teachers of the school they only got the technique side. They didn't get the inner teachings.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where we're at. But for whatever reason, in Shindo Musoryu, which is probably 300-year-old style, they had it, and Pascal Krieger Sensei wrote this book, and it's a great book. I'm going to send it to you. Also, he does calligraphy. He's amazing at calligraphy. Anyways, let's not get lost here. So I read about that. Then, and I realized that I was going through it. I was somewhere in the middle. I was in the Ha thing. I was like,
Yeah.
integrating, but I was always a loyal student in terms of, when I picked a teacher, and the teacher, deemed me worthy to be their student, I just stayed with them until I really outgrew it. But then when I outgrew it, the move away was pretty easy for me. I never really had any bad fallouts with teachers. Okay, so I was seeing, I read this, and I saw that I was going through the hostage. This is basically the application stage, the second stage. And then a few years later, Toby, by the way, Toby Threadgill is an old friend of mine. I'm originally from Dallas. I was after studying Aikido for 5 years, I went to Japan. I lived there for 8 years, and then I went off. I did Buddhist meditation for another 8 years. And I know Toby from Dallas. So back when I was 23 years old, we met, became great friends. He's a few years older than me. He was a Wado-ryu karate guy, and he did a little bit of Aikido. That's how we met. And then he also did Thai kickboxing, and he's a pretty
Mm.
formidable martial artist, Toby. And then he
I've
got
seen some of his
into,
demonstrations
oh no,
and
he's the real deal.
fat like
He's the real
his
deal.
speed is with the drawing
No,
of
it's
the sword.
incredible.
I
It's
was like,
incredible, yeah.
I got chills.
Yeah, he studied with a few other teachers, I think Danaje for a little while, which is also he was a phenomenal martial artist, and then his teacher Takamura Sensei, and he gave me an article that Takamura Sensei had written maybe in the 80s about Shu-ha-ri. It was
Mm.
a photocopy of an article, and it was amazing. I've got that too. I'll send it to you. It's really, really in depth. And then I understood that, oh my God, there's really a whole kind of science to mastery that's happening here. And it's not intellectual science. It's like this dude, this is from research. And if you stay in a style for 10 years, you can look at that as research. You're going to come out of
Yeah,
it like knowing some shit.
yeah,
And especially if it's a style that's not too, it's not only forms.
yes.
They like to mix it up a little bit. They like to kind of let's pressure test what we're learning and see where we're at. Yeah. So, and for example, jujitsu, that's probably on a daily basis. You guys are doing that. So
Does that?
then,
Oh, keep
yeah,
going.
just to finish off my
Yeah,
my
yeah,
thread
please,
here. So
please.
so
Yeah,
then
finish.
that's when I really got it, and then it just became my own research at that point. And I was getting it, but my understanding of Shuhari now, probably 20 years after I came across it, in 25 years, oh my God, maybe even more, 27, 28 years after I came across it. I went through that in Aikido. I went through it again in Aikido later, but then I went through it in my meditation as well. And
Mm,
I studied formal Buddhist meditation, Vipassana meditation in Burma with a master teacher.
yeah.
I did, every winter I was on retreat for anywhere from 2 to 10 months. For 8 years, I did that every winter. And I have a total of 3 years of silent meditation retreat, working with a teacher on a daily basis. And I'd already been through my martial arts, reached some level of mastery, whatever that might be. I was
Yeah.
probably fifth dan at the time. And then I went to do meditation. So I kind of had this whole background, but the meditation was a new art. It was all a new science in a way. And I went into it, and they're really amazing teachers there. And it's like you really got some work to do. And I realized I'm going through, hey, here I am. I know this. I'm going through a process again. I know what it means to submit to a teacher. I know what it is to follow. I know what it means for my ego to want to do everything except what the teacher and the school and the tradition, the lineage. The lineage is a straight line. And if you're throwing elbows and knees and stepping outside of those lines, you're not going to pass through the lineage. So you've got to conform
Yeah.
down. It's like the old Christian saying, no sooner can a camel pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man go to heaven, enter the kingdom of heaven, I think it is. Well, it's not really about being rich. It's about being attached to money. If you got attached to money, you can't go to heaven. The attachment is the problem.
Yeah.
Just like a camel can't fit through the eye of a needle. And interestingly enough, in Jerusalem, I live in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, just over there, 40 minutes away, there's an old, the old city. It's an ancient city, and it has gates at each one of all around the city. And one of the gates is called the Camel Gate. And the
Yes.
Camel Gate, oh no, I'm sorry, it's not called the Camel Gate, excuse me. It's called the Needle.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it's a really narrow gate that only a man walking or a woman walking can pass through. So they built it that way so you couldn't bring your camel with all of its goods on it to pass through that gate. So that's where that saying from Jesus' times,
Yep.
no sooner can a camel pass through the eye of the needle. The needle was the name of that gate. You just can't pass through it. So if you're going to internalize a lineage, meaning that there's a tradition of wisdom masters, tradition of masters who are not just passing down wisdom, but every generation they're building on it. Every generation they're deepening it. Every generation it's becoming more. It also evolves and it also
Yeah.
grows and it also every generation gets an update. So that's all being passed down. In order to become a lineage holder, you've got to walk the straight and narrow on the
Yes.
teachings of that tradition. And to do that, we're looking at 10, 15 years of practice.
And also that means entering, right, and submitting yourself and humbling yourself to that shoe phase, correct?
To all the faces. But
Yes,
here's
yes,
the tricky
yes.
thing. Here's the tricky thing. Not only do I have to, for me to be worthy of that path, I have to humble myself and just conform and follow, starting with Shu. But also the path has to be worthy.
Hmm.
So what do I mean by that? Well, some teachers lead their students astray. The Darth Vader move.
Yes,
So, some like I think we spoke about this last time I was on your podcast
absolutely. Yep.
about the difference between power and the difference between mastery or a spiritual path versus a power path. And we all have to deal with that. And it's a trick. It's a tricky thing to go through. We do get power. We become empowered practicing martial arts, and we do get power, and we find our power over other by being powerful over other people.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have that humble spiritual surrender part of you, then that can easily just become a tool that the ego uses. So the power is in service of the ego rather than the ego submitting to the power.
Yes, yes, yes.
So there's a whole thing here. If we, right now we're just talking theory, but there's a teacher-student relationship, and there's psychology, and there's all daddy issues and mommy issues, and authority issues, and some people wants to be the boss and all that other stuff. It's a really complex thing.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
old Asian traditions, like China and Japan, are the undergirding of their philosophical tradition is Confucianism.
Yes.
Confucianism is a hierarchy that the senpai, the seniors, are benevolent and they're there to kind of take care of you and move you through life. And it's our job to submit and listen and be good students, good boys, good sons and daughters,
Yeah.
good people of society. Now, in the West, we're much more individualistic.
Yes.
So there's a bit of a class of values there. But again, like you said, what did you say? It's kind of a Platonic form. I forget what you said. This
Oh,
Shuhari.
it's a fractal.
No, you said something else about it. It's
Uh,
there whether we're
oh,
an
yes, yes, yes.
individual.
It's just inherent in the structure of learning things. Yeah.
It's somehow genetically or whatever
Yeah.
mimetically, it's inherent.
Yeah.
So so that's the setup. Now we should, if you want, we can jump into Shuhari unless you want to talk about something else.
Well, one thing I want to mention is that I recently learned about this concept. It's a Japanese concept. I can't remember the name, but basically in the No theater, they have this very small door
Hmm.
that the musicians will enter through, and then also
Okay.
in they would have these like kind of almost like a bar or a tavern, right? Which would also have this door where you'd have to crawl through on all fours. And you'll also see this same type of door in the beginning of Spirited Away, the Studio Ghibli film. She
Oh, is that right? Okay.
when she gets into when she first sneaks into the bathhouse in the basement, she climbs through this very small square door that she has to crawl
Okay.
through. And I think that there's a really interesting parallel between the beginning of the Shu phase and having to completely humble yourself and give over your own will basically to that of the lineage, right? And that of the teacher and just follow, right? And it's that kind of like narrow entry. Not very many people are able to kind of like do that. And that's just like the first of many challenges, right? When you enter on this kind of traditional path. So I
Well, have
think
you done Japanese tea ceremony?
no, no, that's something that's a funny thing. It's like also on my list. I have like a book in my Amazon cart on this.
I studied
That's what
Japanese
it
tea
was. It was a
ceremony.
tea house.
There you go.
It
There
was
you
not a
go.
bar. It's a tea house that
There you
where they
go.
have
There
this
you go.
small
There
door.
you go.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I studied tea ceremony for 3 years. Yeah, so, and in the tea house, in the old style tea houses, the door is, if you're sitting in seiza, it's probably like the height of your chest or shoulders, and
Yes.
you gotta bow down to go through it, and it's meant to. Even the emperor has to bow down to get through it.
Yes.
So, wow, cool, very cool. All
So
right,
I think
so that brings us to
the
Shu.
entry.
Maybe I tell you what, let's speak about this in its kind of theoretical form, which is the easiest. And
Hmm.
then if you want to bring in like life experiences and talk
Yeah.
about this and that, we can do it in the middle of it because
Sounds
even though
great.
the form is pretty simple to explain and pretty simple to understand, especially if you're on the path already, on some type of developmental path already, it's pretty easy to understand. But where the rubber meets the road in life, it's incredibly complicated.
Yes.
Shu-ha-ri, 3 stages. Shu means conformity. It's a Japanese word for conformity, not the word, the Japanese character, like one of these characters is for conformity. And it's basically when you take on the styles, manners, customs, forms, and philosophy and teaching of any given school, and technique, of course, of any given school. And to do that, we come in with all kinds of ideas, all kinds of idiosyncrasies, all kinds of habits, good and bad, all kinds of behaviors, all kinds of beliefs. All that stuff needs to get, yeah, what is that? What's
Quieted
it?
down.
Yeah, it can get pounded out of you, or it can be just set aside. If you have the maturity
Yeah.
just to set it aside, make a distinction. But those things have to be given up to learn the styles of the school. And it's all about conformity. Think, you're in the army now. Da, 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 dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, dun.
Yeah.
That's it. You go to boot camp and they break you down and then they build you up. And if that breaking down and building up process works well, you come out of it a damn good soldier,
Yeah.
in an ideal world. Obviously, it doesn't always work that way, but that's the ideal. Same thing in the martial arts. You go through the stage where you learn the katas, the forms, you learn the techniques, you learn the postures, you learn the etiquette, the
Yeah.
reiki of the school. That's a big thing, If you
Yeah.
can't, I mean, reiki is all about bowing down and getting through that door before you
Yes.
go through the door. And, Westerners, we have our own reiki, we have our own ways.
Yes.
I mean, look, Japanese and American cultures have been in, what do you say, mingling for a long time.
Communication. Yeah.
So most Americans kind of understand this stuff already. But there was a time, in the 50s where it was not, it was like an alien thing. And, the round eye, the gaijin, who could become Japanese in a way, were the
Yes.
ones that would get the best at the schools. And of course, when the teachers would see you making an effort to conform, they're ready. That means that we are taking a step towards them. Guess what? They take another step towards us.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
No,
you're
that's
a
a very
teacher.
good
I'm a
point.
teacher. If I get students that are just kind of hanging out doing their training, and they've been with me a few years, I'll challenge them a little bit. But if it's not really, That's okay. That's fine with me.
Yes.
Other students that take a step towards me and they really come to me, I'm there to meet them. Like
Yeah.
it's like now game on. Let's go.
Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely.
if you're a student that has that in a little bit is hunger and you have the humility to approach a teacher, you have to approach a teacher. You have to approach a teacher. You have to approach a teacher. And when I say teacher, I mean the real deal teacher. Then you're in a way you're putting a lot of responsibility in the teacher's hands. You're giving up responsibility. You're being responsible to submit, but you're
Yes.
giving them power to help me take on karma in a way, to help me take on a new way of being. And that's that
Absolutely.
you empower the teacher
Yeah.
to help you become empowered. In fact, just a side note, like in Buddhism, they say, the path of mastery in meditation, let's say it finishes with awakening. But before you can awaken, you have to kind of get to the stage of equanimity, the very high level stage of meditation. Before
Yes.
you can get to the stage of equanimity, you've got to go through this dark night of the soul period. It's really kind of an ego death type of thing.
Yeah.
Before you can go through that, you've got to go into dissolution, where your meditation, you start to see things dissolving away. Before you can get into dissolution, you have to see things breaking up into and that rise parts that rise and pass away. Before you can see that, you have to get into process oriented consciousness. Before you can get to process oriented consciousness, you have to see the cause and effect happening in mind and matter. Before you can see that, you have to see the distinction between mind and matter. Before you do that, you have to access concentration. Before you can access concentration, you have to work through all the noise, the hindrances.
Yeah.
Before you do that, you have to have a technique of
Yeah.
mindfulness. Before you can get a technique of mindfulness, you have to approach a teacher. So I just gave the
Yeah.
path of meditation in reverse.
Yes.
Could be 10, 20 year path
You also have to be
to
born right
enlightenment.
in a world where there was a teacher, right?
There you go. Yeah, 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 exactly. You have to be born in the time in the time of the Dharma, and you have to have good karma. So it really
Yeah.
comes back to
You have to
karma.
encounter
So
them, right?
yeah, yeah, there's that whole thing. Now, it all starts with approaching a teacher, and that's that first humbling stage, and that's what Shu is.
Yeah.
And it again, it doesn't matter if you're a short order cook,
Yes.
or an
Yeah.
Uber driver. Well, maybe not an Uber driver. I don't know, but
No, I think
something.
I've had there are better and worse Uber drivers, Like I think you could master I really do believe, you could master almost anything. I mean, there's
Well,
probably
what I'm talking about is Uber drivers who studied with another Uber driver, and you
ah,
can see that this guy came out of a certain Uber school.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
it is,
That's very
the
interesting.
German Uber driver school or something like
You know,
that.
I think there is some of that because you certain like maybe you get like certain people from certain places who are communicating with each other and they all do certain things like they all have a water bottle in the car, plastic seat covers and stuff.
Okay, there you go.
So,
There you go.
it's
Exactly.
almost like they have, oh, this is the lineage of Pakistani immigrants who, became Uber drivers.
They have the same seat beads or whatever it is. Well, listen, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but the Shuhari, it's a traditional. It's not a modern system. It's a traditional
Yeah.
system, and it's basically the apprenticeship system, the old apprenticeship system, where you go and you live with a master, and you sleep. Let's say, as a master candle maker. You go, you study with that. You go and you live in the shop. First job in the shop is sweeping up, taking out the shit, whatever it is. You sleep in the corner
Yeah.
on a mattress. Then he starts to let you make the wicks and you're doing all the shit work for a few years.
Yes.
Then you start to, and after 10 years, you become a master of making candles or silver or whatever the case may be. That old tradition is Shuhari. So this
Is
is the beginning where you go and
is
you go ahead.
is part of that starting with the shit work, right? Is part of that considered to be a tradition within Shu? Like that's part of how Shu is
Of
structured. That
course.
yeah. Okay. No, because I think this
We're
actually
talking
is
about
really important.
Japanese martial arts, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's the first thing in Japan? Not necessarily in the West, but what's the first thing the student learns how to do in Japan?
Folding the uniform, cleaning the
There
dojo,
you go, cleaning the dojo,
It's
cleaning the dojo, cleaning the dojo. And I was Uchideshi. Uchideshi is a live-in student. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
lived in Iwama which was Saito Sensei's, was the caretaker of the Iwama dojo. The Iwama dojo was O-sensei's dojo. And I went there and my first woke up. I arrived at 8 p.m. one night. It was dark. I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning. My first job is to clean the toilets.
Yeah.
And by the way, the toilets, they weren't flush toilets. There were holes in the ground, porcelain little shithole.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And literally, and you had to clean them. Those had to be cleaned every single morning. Somebody had to do that
Yeah.
job, and I did that for a year, and I actually liked that job. I like that job because you get even though it's disgusting, you get an immediate sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
And every time I had to go to the toilet, I knew they were clean. It's like, okay, I know the
Also,
toilet's
I
clean.
think there's something about it that's really powerful for learning something this way is that you learn it from the ground up, right? Like the reality is if you want to practice Aikido and live in the dojo, you need somewhere to go to the bathroom, right? If you want to practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you have to keep the mats clean, right? So you have to keep your laundry clean. When you learn this base level of it, especially as like when you're in, because I've lived in two different jujitsu gyms for extended periods of
Hmm.
time in my life where, I'm living in the gym and I'm responsible for all the upkeep
Okay.
and all different things, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the modern like
Yeah.
uchideshi situation. It goes on kind of more than people realize, but you
Hmm.
know, when you're doing this stuff, you realize what goes on around a practice to support it and make it possible. And by
It's
having
amazing.
mastery over all those elements, you can always create a space to practice, which is actually like
Well, there
very
you go.
powerful.
Well, you treat the environment with care and respect.
Yeah,
It starts there. You're treating the toilet with care and respect. If you can be careful and respectful to a toilet, anybody who walks in the dojo, you can be careful and respectful towards.
yeah,
You may not. What do you say? I mean, they might be assholes,
yeah, yeah,
and you can see that, but still, you behave with care and respect. This is it's old, Karate Kid type of stuff.
yep.
That's that wax on, wax off.
And I
Shu
think
is the
that's
wax on, wax
where
off stage.
I think that's where Westerners sometimes also have trouble, right, with this particular phase, is that we often want to see like utility or reasoning or all
Well,
of
we're
these things
individuals. We're individuals,
before
yeah.
we do it. It's like you got to
Yeah.
do it first.
Yeah, well, we're individuals and we want instant gratification.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's fine. I mean, that can be okay. You can even, I suppose, become a master at something doing that. But the old school, there's something about the old school. It just shapes you from the inside. And that's the whole thing. These three stages, Shuhari, you spend about 5 to 10 years in each one of those stages. And
Yeah,
everybody's different. But when you go through it, it becomes internalized. It starts to change you from the inside out.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit more about Shu.
yeah,
You conform completely to the style, the school, the manner, the etiquette, the things like that I was talking about. But then there's the katas, the techniques. What do we want to do immediately? And I'm sure I have no doubt it's like this in jiu-jitsu as well. When we get into a moment of conflict, we go into fight, flight, freeze. If it's fight, you're going to just start muscling your way through.
hmm
And a good partner will, especially if they're a senior partner, they're going to show you right away.
yeah,
That will get you nowhere. In fact, you're going to suffer if you do that. So you have to submit and start to learn the forms. And what is more important, the priority is the form, not the effectiveness.
mm.
So, our instinct wants to be effective.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no,
yeah,
fuck the effectiveness. Learn the form. And when you're learning the form, what, and you're not going for effectiveness, what you're doing is you're controlling the wild animals inside of us. Your kind of animal instincts get somehow controlled, and we just go for the form. There's a delayed gratification. I'm
yeah,
investing in loss. I lose all that stuff,
yes,
but it's an investment until I get good at the forms. And what'll happen is slowly, slowly, slowly in those forms, I'll start to see a little bit of effectiveness. Once the forms start to align with the ground and with my center and with connection, and the technique gets smoother, then as you go through this Shu-ha-ri stage, when at the beginning you're ineffective, but you're learning the forms, when you reach the pinnacle of this first stage, you start to master the forms and they're effective. But
mm.
they're only effective inside of the form. Somebody comes and does something a little bit different, and you're back to square one. It's not effective
Yeah, yeah.
anymore. And you got
It's
to
not
deal with
stable.
it's not well, it's stable in the form, but you
Yeah,
move out of the
it can't
form,
be perturbed.
it can be perturbed, and you move out of the form, and suddenly, once again, you're fighting the ego, the animal instinct to prove yourself to even
Yeah,
more because you've invested. And by the way, Shu is all the way up to black belt, the way that I teach it.
yeah,
This is generally speaking, everybody learns differently, of course,
yeah.
but up to black belt, you're learning into Shu. So like when I teach my students and when they come up to the black belt test, I want to see them master the forms. I don't want to see actually part of the black belt test at the very end is a freestyle. But other than the freestyle at the end, it's, you're showing me the textbook techniques, and they need to be smooth, they need to be effective, they need to be skillful, and they need to be within, the forms have to be more or less perfected, and they need to be an expression of the principles. That all happens in the shoe stage. But
Mm.
again, the powerful expression of the principles only happen within the forms. So somebody comes in and they're doing things a little bit different, you feel like a beginner again.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That feeling, like shit, it's not working anymore. That feeling is the beginning of ha.
Ah,
Ha,
uh-huh.
ha is separation. And basically, that's why I said before, it's separate. Ha means hanareru. It means to separate. What are we separating from? We're separating from the forms. So not only does it mean separation, but it also means application. So imagine you go to school to become an engineer. You do your 4 years, and you on paper you can build a bridge. Great, let's go. Go out there to that canyon and build a fucking bridge. I promise you, it's not going to be like it's on the paper. You're gonna run into all kinds of things that just weren't part of the theory, and you're going to have to learn how to apply the theory because the theory is solid. The theory it's sound. The katas are sound, but I might have to change them a little bit to fit this particular canyon or this particular conditions. And so ha is all about application, where we take those forms and we start to step out of our comfort zone. By Shodan, everything that you do on your Shodan test, you become comfortable about it. And you can even start, you're probably even teaching beginners as they're coming in. You're helping them out because you've been through all that stuff. And it could be Shodan, but it could happen sooner. It could happen later. Again,
Later, yeah.
everybody's different. But one more thing about the shoe stage.
Hmm.
It's like going through a gate, we're at the bottom or a funnel.
Yeah,
The bottom of the funnel is really wide. And then as you get to the pinnacle, which is this kind of showdown, let's call it showdown, it gets very narrow. And what is very wide when it's wide at the bottom for the beginner, there's just all kinds of room for their idiosyncrasies. They don't have their posture. Their feet aren't really their feet work is a mess, and they're not really centered, and they're just using muscle. Okay, there's space for that for the beginner.
it's
You do the
conformity,
first
right? So
test,
like there's
but
less conformity at the base of the pyramid, right? At the base of
well,
the
they're learning how to conform. Yeah,
Yeah, they
but
don't
a
know
big
yet.
part of the
Yeah.
there's two things that we're conforming to. We're conforming to the forms, but we're also letting go of our ego tendencies.
Yeah.
So, the first Q test, if they're muscling it a little bit, it's fine. If they don't know the Japanese terms, doesn't matter. Not the first Q test, excuse me. Their first Q test, which is fifth Q,
Yeah.
their fifth
Fifth
Q
cue.
test. Yeah,
Not first cue.
yeah, right, yeah. So they don't need it. But as they get to fourth Q and third Q and second Q and first Q, though that becomes more and more narrow, and they have to become more and more a representation of the style of the school. By Shodan, you're a walking, talking expression of the school, of the tradition. And anybody can look at you and say, "Oh, that's Saito Sensei student. Oh, that's Chiba Sensei student. Oh, you'll be able to just see that's Popkin Sensei student. You should be able to see if and when it goes smooth. I'm sure it's the
Nice.
same thing in jujitsu. You can look at somebody and say, "Hey,
Yes.
you trained with this teacher. You trained with that teacher."
Yeah, yeah. There's little things in the techniques that you'll see. You'll say, "Oh, that's from
Right.
so and so." Yeah. So with that shoe phase and the emphasis on the form, one question I have for you is like, is the forms are actually a vehicle that you submit yourself to those forms, and by mirroring them you get the opportunity to embody technique the principles. Is that kind of the idea that by the time you get to the ha phase you've on some level embodied some of these principles through the form and that
That's right.
allows you to apply them?
Well, yeah, I would say a little bit different. I would say you've internalized the forms.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah. That's
internalize the techniques, but only in the narrow, what do you see, the narrow range of techniques. And by the way, it's probably not like this in jujitsu, but it certainly is like this in Aikido. You'll see many styles of Aikido. They're only Shu style. They're only doing Shu. They
I think
don't
a
go
lot
any
of
further.
teachers, I think there's a lot of teachers who they're comfortable instructing the shoe phase and not much beyond it.
Well, also in Japan, that's whatever. It's a conformist culture, anyways. So, and the reason I say you see this in Aikido is because in Aikido we don't do competition.
Hmm.
So you can have a beautiful form, but nobody's going to come and challenge it. Nobody's going to, you follow, we're polite to each other. Nobody's going to go in there and grab you a little bit harder here, a little bit harder there. If you're a
Yeah,
black belt, we pretty much respect where you're at. And, we can get, you look at somebody, you size them up, you get their number, whatever, but you're not going to go and test them out. And
yeah,
that's one of the unfortunate, not in Tamiki, by the way. I guess in Tamiki it's different. But that's one of the unfortunate downsides of Aikido. I don't think it's a problem that we don't do competition, but it's a problem that sometimes Shu becomes the a plateau.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It can be now. I want to make a distinction between a plateau and a glass ceiling. A
Mm,
plateau is just where it peaks out. It doesn't. There's nobody challenging it to go further. A glass ceiling is when the teacher or the teaching or the school doesn't let you grow.
mm.
You start to kind of jump above your belly button, so to speak, and they're there to hammer you back down. No,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
follow. No, Sensei Abe, or I don't know Abe, whatever. Sensei Toyota. It has to be exactly like he
yeah,
died, and we're going to respect him, and we're not going to change anything. You have to do. I respect that. I understand it. It's good to respect your teacher, but it's also bullshit.
yeah, totally. I
I
think that
mean,
there's kind of different ways people fall into that, like it's just a tricky situation, but
it's a
sometimes
tricky
I think that
situation.
there's no substance there and that people because there isn't really substance, there's just a lot of imitation and because of that it leads to insecurity on the part of the teacher, right? And then they want to hammer the students down. But I also think sometimes when there is really good substance, the students start to get really powerful and that also freaks teachers out. So
It can.
I think you could end up in those glass ceiling situations more
Well,
than
there's also
people
this.
may.
There's also the situation where the teachers invested years and years and years into who they are, and suddenly somebody starts to rise above that level.
Yeah.
Eh, It's a lot. It's a lot for unless you've really, again, you go through the Shu-ha-ri, all three phases, your ego is going to be pretty cleaned.
Yeah.
It like blows out the channel of learning, and then you start to understand that the prime directive is truth. What the fuck is true here? Let's pressure test it and see what's true.
Mm.
Yeah, let's really look at it. And I don't mean just technique, obviously, technique.
Yeah, it
Let's
goes
pressure
beyond that.
test it and see. But let's also pressure test the school, the teachings of the school, the tenets of the school. Let's pressure test them and see where they stand. Let's pressure. Oh yeah, there's a lineage. Okay, let's pressure test the lineage and see where it stands up.
Yeah.
That's only a good thing, man.
Yeah.
Truth will set us free, as
Yeah, like
the
it can
as a
only
wise
give
man once
us more
said.
that this is one of the things I talk a lot about with Aikidoka specifically, where I'm like, don't
Mm.
you think more information, more feedback about what you're doing from people who are giving you different kinds of resistance at the right phase, right? Not for white belts who don't, for
You're right.
Fitbuse
Yeah,
who doesn't know
absolutely.
anything. It's not going to help them. It's going to confuse them. But for
Yeah.
somebody who's a Nidan or a Sandan, it might be really rich and really useful to explore what happens when some of these solutions that you've found are perturbed. I think that that's and
Yeah.
I don't want to skip ahead, but there's a funny mnemonic thing here where I feel like one of the things that characterizes the re phase is you have your own personal research. Like you're kind of like you
Oh
get your
yeah.
own little projects and you're like, "Oh, I want to learn about this," like I get this all the time where I'm like, "Let's just look into Ki Jutsu." Like let's see if we can find any texts on Ki Jutsu. What are they doing here? Or Atemi or Kyusho, some little topic and I just say, "Hey, I want to dive into this, right?" So I wonder if that's
You could you
also
could have a
kind of a
quirky thing about, let's say, darts, like the
yeah,
tradition of English darts in the West
yes,
Midlands. They
yeah,
have a whole school, and you enter it with that same mentality. It's like,
yeah,
no, there's a tradition here, it's a research thing, and it's going to inform everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
That's when mastery that's the sign of mastery in a way.
It's fascinating.
So second stage,
Ha.
ha. This is really the application stage. In Aikido, it's best reflected in two teachings. One is Henkawaza and Oyawaza. Not every school, Aikido school, talks about these or does these. I suppose they all do it in some way, but Henkawaza is variations. So you know the technique Katate Dori Kotegaeshi, right?
Hmm.
How many different ways can you do it? Same
A
attack,
lot.
same
So
technique.
many.
So you can systemize that. You
Yeah.
can systemize it. Yeah, let's say and not only can you systemize it, but let's do the variations and let's do, because this is just exploring how many, it's like one of those things you go, hey, is there another way to do this technique? Hey, is there, and you realize that there's simple ways to do it and there's incredibly complex ways to do it. And if you systemize it from simple to complex. There's the first
Yes.
one, second one, third one, fourth one. I can do the hand release this way, the hand release that way, the hand release this way. I can step in Idimi Tenkan. I can just do a Tenkan, just do a Kaiten. I can do with Kino Nagata. I can do it. It's
Now you
endless.
have me thinking about a Ushiro Kotagaishi where I finish with Sutemi Waza. So like some kind of dropping.
There you
There must
go.
be a way to do a dropping Kotagaishi.
Well, Ushiro Ryote Dori Kotegaeshi, there's a million ways to do it, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
think of
yeah.
the way that the guy comes around you and the
Yes,
way that
yes.
you feed him. There's just so many ways to do it. And that becomes a whole new science that people in the Sioux stage, they can do it, but they can't really do it.
Yeah.
They need to have Ha, the fundamental requirement of Ha, I would say, is you have a fluency of the curriculum. Everything that's on a test up to black belt, you're fluent in it. You're
Yeah.
not, it's not like, huh, what is that? What is that thing? No, you're fluent in it, and you have a decent level of competency. You can do it.
And you
So then
start
you
to
get
be
to
able
huh.
to have variation, but without breaking principles. So like you start to kind of like open up the like with that Henko Waza, you're starting to change the techniques a little bit. But if you have a white belt do that, they'll do things that are like, for lack of a better term, wrong or bad or not so
Yeah,
good,
yeah. It
right?
won't be aligned with the principle.
Yes.
They'll be back. Yeah. So there you go. So in now remember, I break it the way I teach it. I break it down into two parts. The first one is the Henkawasa. That's the variations I was talking
And then
about.
Oyo.
One attack, one technique. Let's see how many different ways you can do it. Also, there's the Iwama style way of doing it. There's the Aikikai style way of doing it. There's the Tomiki style way of doing it. There's the Ki Society style way. These are all just variations. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's the variations. The big question is if it's aligned with the principles or not. If it's not aligned with the principles, you can't really say it's Aikido. If it
Yep.
is aligned with the principles, then it's in the Aiki. It's in that Aiki. And that's the whole point. So you can do that's an endless research. Yeah. And what's great about, I'll talk about applications in a minute. There's the variations, the Henkawaza. What's great about this is you just start to get really, really fluent. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
what does it mean to do a Shihonage on the beach? It's different than the dojo. What it means to do when I've only got one leg in my pants and somebody attacks me is different when I've got my gi. And what does it mean to do it on the sofa? What does it mean to do it when somebody attacks you in bed? What does it mean to do it when two people attack you? Same technique.
Yeah.
That's all. This is all like variation. So you study it. You set up these scenarios and you study it and you start to become really fluent. Then the application stage, the ha is all application, but oyowaza is application. It's like, okay, James, we're going to study kotegashi today, and you have to do kotegashi. Are you ready? And then we just attack freely, and you got
Ah,
to find kotegashi.
yes. So now
Sumo
you
guy could
develop
come at you.
variability in your entry. So you need to learn different
There,
ways to
well,
enter
there you
into
go. And yeah, and you do sumo, yeah, and you do. I see the stuff that you're doing online. So let's say a sumo guy attacks you. Hey, dude, you got to find kotegashi.
yeah.
Sorry. Jiu-jitsu guy, you got to find kotegashi. A karate guy, you got to find
So it's so funny.
tuisho,
This
you
is
got to
what I
find
do,
kotegashi.
right? This is
This is
actually when
all
you do
application.
so this is my Oyowaza like
It's
practice,
all
right? Is that I
application.
say I'm
Eh,
gonna do Kotagaish in sumo, even if it's illegal, like I'll go to judo class and I'll hit them with a Kotagaish. They get so mad, right? But so I'll do in all different places, right? And what I find
Yeah.
is that now the Kotagaish, I'm really starting to understand what is Kotagaish, why does the Kotagaish work, you know? You get so much insight into it this way.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And you do, and you start to apply it to different situations. What does it mean to do it with one attacker, two attackers, three attackers, four attackers? What does it mean when one person's got a He's going to come at you with his empty hand. Another's going to come at you with a knife. Another one's going to come at you with a bokin. There's going to be two attackers. Somebody's going to be, one guy's wearing boxing gloves. This is
Yeah.
all, and it's fun. It's fun. You can set up scenarios, get in the middle. Well, let's do some Kotegaeshi application. Let's do some Shio-nage applications. Let's do some Kaite-nage applications. Just go through the whole thing. Applications,
Yes.
applications, applications. You can see already this is an advanced class. Beginners can't do this.
No.
If somebody's in the shoe stage, you have to really dumb it down and kind of take baby steps so they can work with it, which is fine. But to have fun with it and to learn and to get into it where and you can see somebody imagine doing that type of training. You don't have to imagine, you're doing it for 3, 4 years. You get fucking pretty good. You get,
Yeah.
when you walk in, you go get gas in the middle of the night and you walk into a gas station to pay, you're more confident with yourself. You never know, some of these gas stations, you don't know what's going to happen. You're just ready. You're just open and ready for whatever might come. That's that second stage of mastery. And for me, Shu is up to Shodan. Ha is really all about a Nidan, second degree black belt.
Hmm.
And it's when we've conformed, now we start to create kind of a multiplicity of forms from that conformity freely. That's the application, free applications. Application has to be free, not predetermined, not set. You can set up scenarios to practice, but ultimately it has to be a free application. And then, it will start to move into the third stage, the restage, the transcendent. And what'll happen is you'll start to see that the up until that stage, I had the forms that were an expression of the principles. At the Ha stage, the principles now I'm starting to express those freely in new forms. And then at the restage, it's not even about the forms anymore. It's about the principle manifesting in reality. And
Yeah.
then it's really from the inside out. The art, you become an expression of the art.
It's actually giving birth to new forms.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say, because what happens at that point, you don't look like your teacher anymore. You
Yeah.
will not look like your teacher. You will, if your teacher's a master and you get to that stage, what you will look like is you'll look like the same mastery.
Yeah.
But the forms are going to be completely different, completely
I,
different.
I also feel like there's things in these arts that are like signatures. Like I'll give you an example. We have a kata called Junanahon no kata in Tamiki. It has 17 techniques, right?
Mhm.
But when I do it, I do 18, right? And that's
Why?
because my teacher does 18. There's this extra technique that Tamiki wanted to put in, but everyone told him, no, you can't do it. And everybody in
There you
my
go.
lineage, yeah, they said it's too late. It's reverse
Auxiliary. I have
wakizashi.
tons of those. They're
It's
auxiliary.
reverse
Yeah,
walk
yeah.
out. So there's this 10A, and I do the 10A. My teacher does 10A. So if you know, you'll know. Oh, Tamiki Ronan, those people, they always do 10A, right? So there's 18 in there, Junahan. So I feel like sometimes you have these little signatures. So even when you reach the re stage and you look different than your teacher, you can kind of say like, no, 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 look, he's doing 10A. That's how you know he studied with him.
Well, for like traditional Japanese, especially Japanese, because they're so good at conformity, culturally speaking. To add a 10A is blasphemy at the shoe stage. That's
Yeah,
considered blasphemy. Of course, somebody who's past the shoe stage, they don't give a fuck. But it's the same thing with like my main Aikido style is Iwama-ryu, even though I've moved far outside of that that box. But with the weapons, it's very simple. Like with the sword work, there's seven saburi, there's two awase. Sorry, there's seven suburi, there's four awase, there's five kumitachi, there's 20 variations of those five kumitachis, and there's one kimisubi no tachi. 7, 4, 5, 21. That's the formula.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a shitload more that you can do. And
Yes.
that's all auxiliary stuff that, Saito Sensei would teach every now and then. Sometimes he would package it in a little thing and maybe teach a little workshop on it. But to be honest, it's always growing. It's always growing. It's good to have those, let's say, boundaries where we're demarcated, learn this. But, for somebody, let's say like you and me, who might be teaching from we, and that's the thing about
Yeah.
Even though Re has transcended the form, you might actually just put down your belt and just walk away go into life and that's it. You might choose to do that. That's fine. You don't
Yeah.
really need that vehicle anymore.
Yeah.
Most of us, not most of us, but many of us actually start teaching. Maybe we've
Yeah.
even started teaching before. So we will go back into Shu, but this time you're going back into Shu as a teacher.
Mm.
And your responsibility is to get the student to be the best Shu that they can be. So even though you can fly to the moon with whatever you're doing, you get down on the ground and you say, no, no, put your foot here, get both feet on one line. Your shift your weight. It has to be the proper weight. Let's check your center, relax your shoulders, get your posture, let the energy go down while you extend out. All of these things, you just
This
take
is
your time. You go back,
this is something I went through really. I really struggled with this, and I wish I had, found these resources sooner because I feel like I went into sort of like this rephase in my own practice where not as a teacher, but just as my own practice where the form and even principles really fell away. Like it's kind of like I could just do whatever I want. It doesn't, like I don't really have to adhere to a technique or whatever. Like I could beat up another
did you have a
person.
role model?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's the important thing. So it
Yeah,
can happen yourself, kind of like the way you're teaching it, talking about it, or a teacher can actually hold your hand and say, hey, look, dude, now you're moving into re because you're a teacher. So
yeah.
let's say you see somebody on the edge of shoe.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, dude, you got shoe. Let's do some ha. Today
Yes.
we're gonna do some ha. You're gonna
No, it's so powerful.
pepper them, ba 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 ba, and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then
Yeah,
they're excited. It's a whole new learning, a whole new horizon. Or let's say they're at the limit of ha, and it's like time to get into the re. Okay, then drop the forms. Let me see what you can do. Let's just drop it on. Let's just play. And then it's like a whole nother thing. So to have a teacher that can midwife you through shu to ha, through ha to ri, and through ri to your own expression, where they're really letting you go and say,
yeah,
hey, dude, you got it. I give you my stamp of approval, the certificate or whatever. Go out, go forth and be happy. Create your own art if you want. Take on students if you want. Stay
yeah,
here. Help me run the school. It doesn't matter. But they really give you the freedom to go. Now that happens it's more rare than common.
yeah. Yeah, I would
And
say a really developed teacher. It takes a really not martially, but spiritually, like they have to have mastered other dimensions of the martial art.
martially, spiritually, and psychologically.
Yeah, 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 all three.
Again,
Yep.
if they make the Darth Vader move, if the ego is holding on to power at any one of those stages,
Not gonna
it's
happen.
it's well, it's not going to be smooth. You might have to break away.
Yeah.
And that happens more often than not, I think.
So I think, what's interesting to me too is when I came into the re phase as a martial artist, as a practitioner, that it made teaching really hard because I didn't want to lie to my students and I couldn't figure out how not to misrepresent what I could see from the vantage point of the re phase. So
Hmm.
what I eventually came back to is that I needed to put them through a shoe phase, right? Like I needed to give them a basic set of principles and rules they could follow, even if on the level of ultimate truth, right, those rules might eventually have exceptions or fall apart, that I would give them the best thing I possibly could to give them some structure and framework to get them to kind of shepherd them through that first phase. And I immediately noticed that all of my students were like, wow, this is so much clearer, so much better. And like, I feel like I'm learning stuff again. And I'm like, oh, this is really good. Like, I kind of like, because I went through this weird disillusion where I was like, I don't even know what to teach anymore because I'm not doing anything.
It's weird, but it's normal.
Yeah.
In fact, it's indicative of that stage. Like all your moorings and orientations have fallen apart. And
Yeah.
that's
No, people
good.
ask me a
Great.
question.
So
They're like, how do you do
apply.
this? I'm like, I don't know because you don't have to do that.
But and I'm assuming here, but if you sat back and watched them train, you could walk up to them and say, "Hey, this." You could put your finger exactly on what needed to be worked
Yes.
on
Yeah.
because it's right there. It appears
Yep.
you're not following a formula anymore. You're meeting reality, and reality is showing you what's needed.
Yes.
And then you just meet it, and you meet it in a way that is like a hand inside of a glove. It's perfectly appropriate. That's
Yeah.
mastery. We
Yeah.
often go to classes with a formula. Today we're going to work on these techniques if there's tests or something going on. It's like, okay. Other times you go and, hey, what do you want to do today? Let's start practicing. And you look, and yeah, well, hey, well, we will do. And then, oh, there's a need over here. Let's go. And it might become the whole lesson, you know, it might become the whole seminar.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, you
yeah.
see there's a need. Like when I left Japan, I was, like I said, Japanese culture is extremely conformist.
Conformist. Yeah.
And I had, and it in a good way. And I moved up the ranks. You know, I was there for 8 years, and after 5 years, I'd hit the peak of my practice. I wouldn't say I hit
Hmm.
the peak of my practice. I hit the peak of the Japanese thing. You know, I became more Japanese than the Japanese type of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then it was like, okay, let's get over this now and let me find who I really am now. And I kept training, it was hardcore training, I was still getting good at training, but I was starting to reach the glass ceiling
It was like you
in
were
the dojo.
saturated with what you were doing and to the point where it had filled you through, right? And you need maybe change in order to keep progressing.
Well, there was that, and there was the also, you know, I was learning the language and everything like that, and my belly was full.
Yeah.
Because I didn't need to keep, you know, I didn't feel like I needed to create a career in Japan or, you know, marry
Yes.
a Japanese woman and stay there the rest of my life or anything. I was
Yes.
starting to like, okay, I came here to do this and I've got it. And it took me, I stayed for 3 more years to kind of unbecome Japanese and become much more normal. I was fluent back then I was fluent in the language and I just became, the thing interesting, those 3 years, I started to see more people, more and more, I started to see young especially young Americans, but not only. No, no, I shouldn't. Europeans and Americans, young men coming in and doing the same thing I did, becoming, becoming kind of Nazis about this style.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I was just like, I'm already out of that. It's interesting, whatever. And I understood it because I went through it, and I would
Yep.
always, caution them and whatever. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they wanted to be the teacher's best student
No,
and
I
have
see
fun.
that with the young blue belts. I mean, I had a kid in my gym. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna move to Texas. I'm gonna go train with the big guys with Danaher and da da." And I'm like, it's like it's the same thing I went and did it. And you're like, "Oh man, like listen, like there's a lot of like hangups and pitfalls. Like let me like let's sit down and like talk about this just so you know what you're."
If they're open to talking about it, they're not
Yeah,
always
yeah, yeah.
open.
No, they're not always. Yeah.
So when I left Japan, I was pretty well known in that school, in that tradition, in that style, and around the world because it was a world famous dojo. So a lot of people were coming. So I was getting a lot of invitations to go around teach seminars. Did that for 20 years. In fact, I did it up until this war started. I stopped doing it because I just needed to stop traveling. And then when I started teaching in Europe, I saw that no, wait, hang on a second, guys. I would go around and I would see the super conformist schools of the style that I was a representation of, and I knew
Mm,
that was their problem. So I would teach them to relax it. I started teaching them
yeah.
like, no, integrate this and relax it, and because I was also moving out of the style, I was becoming my own man in a way, my own
Hmm.
teacher, my own Aikido, and it was very popular. But there were some schools that was too much. They didn't want it. They just wanted to, and my God, they're repeating the same techniques for 40 years. And it's like doing dinosaurs. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want to be critical, but just as a phenomena, it's like,
Yes.
dinosaurs just repeating the old stuff and, dust is coming out of their joints and whatever.
Well, I think there's something there in terms of there's a amazing comfort in the shoe phase, right? Like there's sort of like this, you sign
There's a
yourself
comfort.
over to the teacher,
That's right.
you're like a
Yeah.
baby, right? You don't have
And
to
there's an
think.
investment in the identity, especially if you're identified with a certain teacher. Like my teacher was a famous teacher, Saito Sensei. So, you got his picture on the wall and you're saying, "Hey, me, Saito Sensei, oh Sensei, God, direct
Yeah.
line."
Yep.
And I could just see how much ego was involved with it. And again, I don't want to, it's human nature. So I'm not trying to slag off anybody here, but I
Well, I
realized
think
that
that
I
oh,
wasn't interested in that. I
yeah.
just wasn't interested in that. I was interested more in
Yes.
truth. So
Yes.
I just started spitting out the truth, not in a critical way or whatever. Just, there was nothing negative about what I was teaching. It was all positive, and it was lit up. It was
Yeah.
authentic, just like this conversation.
Totally.
We're engaged here, man. This is some
Yeah.
interesting shit.
Yeah.
Somebody else might find it interesting. It's fine, but it's not like we're it's not like I'm convincing you of a tradition or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. It's like, there's a ball that's rolling, right? And these people, they have had a certain amount of momentum, they've achieved this shoe phase, and you're coming in, they've asked you to come teach, you see it, and you're like, all right, let's keep the ball rolling. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's your job.
Exactly. Yeah. And not only let's keep it let's look where it's alive. This thing's alive
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
This is fun, man. Let's do this. Everything inside of us wants to do it. Yes, 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 yes. In fact, I built a career off of that, so to speak, and
absolutely.
that's I mean that's why, I was doing seminar when I was really on I was doing like 20 seminars a year, just like flying around and mostly in Europe, because Europe you can do there's a lot of countries and that you can go
Yeah.
around.
So with the rephase, could you talk a little bit more, just briefly, about how is it that we kind of like encourage the movement from the end of the ha phase into the re phase? And how do we keep nurturing our practice through this re phase? Because that's something that, I've had mixed results with personally. Like I feel like I have periods where it's really good, and then there's periods where it gets really dark. So I think the re phase is very interesting and something, I'd like to hear
Well, how
your
does it
take
become
on.
dark? I mean, can you say more about that?
I think that sometimes you can reach a point in the practice where you've made certain discoveries and they're kind of like at odds with what you're able to present to your students,
Uh-huh.
with what you're able to communicate, right? Like
Yeah.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Or or you
the
can
best
communicate
example I
it.
can give you is just that I cannot bring students to my level, right? Like as much as I try, right? Like I just can't do it. I can get
But it's
people
not your,
kind of
but that's
close.
the thing. But it's not your job to bring them to your level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So maybe
Do you
that's
know
where
what I
some
mean?
of the
Do you know what I mean by that? I
I
understand what you're saying. I'm the same. There's
mhm.
none of my students have reached kind of where I'm at, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
not our job to bring them to their level. It's our job as teachers to bring them to the best at their level, the best of
Yes.
their level, and keep them there. And then trust that the next step is going to go.
Hmm.
But it's at some point the student really has to, in their own mind, you got this. I've never trained with you, but I know you a bit from we've had two talks and I've seen your videos. At some point, the student has to be hungry. It's
Yeah.
like not satisfied with what they got,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
become complacent. It's like, no, there's more here. There's more here. There's more here. There's more here. The frothy edge is like exciting. And if you really go deep into what you're doing, and what you know, what you've mastered, go deep into it, you're going to reach a limitation and realize, hang on a second, it's not that. I haven't mastered this. And there's going to be something more that you need. So if
So
you're teaching, and
yeah.
let's say you're trying to bring somebody from the ha stage to the re stage, the best way that you can do is make them fucking kick ass at ha. Make them the best
Yeah.
ha that they can be.
Mm.
And if you see that they become attached to Ha, that's where you can help them the most.
Ah, yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense.
So even this idea of endless application, it's cool. You can go, we can do it endlessly. I mean, really,
Yeah. No, it's infinite.
let's climb a tree and do martial arts. Yeah, why
It's
not? You
actually
can,
it's actually more than infinite, right? Because you actually have degrees of infinity within application. Because if you talk about Henkawaza, you're talking about the second half of the application, like the finish, right? So we can have infinite variation in the finish. We also can have infinite variation in the entry, and then we have infinite variation in the attack. So now you have 3 degrees of, it's like
you got three
endless.
degrees of 3 degrees of 3 degrees of 3 degrees, whatever it is. It's incredibly complex what you just said, right?
Yeah.
There's a complexity there.
Yes.
When you get to re, it's simple again.
Yes, yes,
It's the
yes.
second simplicity. It's just simple, man. It's just it's like what? The 34 variations of what? I don't know. What are you talking about? Show me what you mean. Attack me. And
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
just
yeah.
go. It's simple. Everything is simple again. It's
Yes.
all simple again. You know the 33 variations of the fourth kumitachi, whatever. You did them, you got them, but it's like, what's your point? Let's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
practice. Let's be real. And then it's all simple again.
It's
It's
almost
all
like,
simple
you can
again.
only do one move at a time.
Well, exactly, and the 43 variations of the third kumitachi. And there's no such thing, but just for example,
Yeah.
that's so internalized that you just, it's like the little folders are there to pull out, but you're no longer pulling out the third variation of the fourth kumitachi and opening it up and doing it. There's a delay. There's a time process in that. Somebody
Yeah.
attacks me with this attack, and I'm gonna do the fourth tiger variation of the dragon serpent.
Yep.
Okay, I got to think about all that stuff. But now let's just be.
Yes.
Let's just be. And you could say, "Hey, be like a tiger." Okay. And you're just out there doing martial arts like a tiger. Be like a dragonfly. Okay. And you're out there doing it. Be like
Yeah,
what are the Kung Fu Panda animals? I forget what they were.
yeah.
Oh, the
The
praying mantis.
mantis.
Be a
Yes,
praying
yes.
mantis. Okay. Then you're just playing, and then you're
Yeah.
just being a praying mantis. You're not doing the 34 variations of the praying mantis on the full moon of the lunar calendar, whatever.
It makes perfect sense.
It's simple again. Re is simple. So to move somebody from ha to re, they have to master ha, but they have to drop the complexity and just be simple again.
That makes a lot of
And
sense.
being simple again doesn't mean they can't be complex. It's the simplicity on the other side of complexity.
Mm,
There's the first simplicity that the beginner learns. No, put your feet here, grab here, and when you're thrown, step back, bend your knee, put your butt down, and make a ball and roll. Super
yes.
simple for the beginner, whatever, however you teach it. Now we're simple again. And that's why there's something nice about being in the restage and teaching a beginner. It's so simple. Hey, yeah, hang on a second. Yeah, we're gonna get this form, but hang on, just now
Yeah,
bring your
yeah.
breathing. Relax in here. Okay, cool. Okay, now how do you feel here? Great. Now meet your partner and then extend. And you're able to bring presence in and an embodied presence in the way that a
Yes.
beginner can just get it. And not only
Yeah.
that, the beginner walks out of the dojo, they might have learned one or two techniques in a rudimentary level, but they walk out of the dojo with some presence, with some
Yeah, they feel.
embodiment.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
get it.
Yeah,
You've
it's so cool.
transmitted that to them. And that, more than anything else, James, that's the moneymaker, so to speak. That gets them to keep
Yeah.
paying the dues every month. They're
Yeah.
going to come back. Because Kotegaeshi and all these 34 variations of the dragon serpent, whatever, those things, you'll do them in the dojo, but you will never chances are you'll never do them in daily life.
Yeah.
If somebody attacks you, I hope to God that you can do them. But there's a chance that it won't even work if somebody attacks you in the subway. It might not
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But opening your chest, breathing, getting your spine straight, and
Yeah.
just kind of being present and connecting with somebody and receiving them, all times, all places, all circumstances. You can do that in the boardroom, and you can do that in the bedroom. You take
No,
that to
totally.
every aspect of your day with your
It's
daughter.
universal.
It's universal. Yeah,
And I think that's
exactly.
something so cool about the Shu-ha-ri thing because I've done a lot of arts. I've trained with a lot of different teachers, and every time I come into a new one, people kind of are like, "Wow, like you have such a nice way of going about learning." And I always, before finding this concept, I could never put my finger on what it is, but I always had this sense that, when I go to learn something new, I'm like, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna give myself over to whatever it is that they're doing. And I realize now that that ability to just like jump into the shoe phase, this is something that as you learn any art that has this depth, right? If you learn multiple things, when you go into the next one or you go into the next rotation of this Shuhari, you bring something with you. It's something like very deep in your being where you're better able to recognize the pattern of learning. It's like learning how to learn.
Well, and not only that, as a teacher, yeah, when somebody comes into the dojo and you're looking at them, and right away it's like, hey, what have you done before? If they're bringing it with them, you know it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're just on a different wavelength. You're able to talk and teach on a different level.
Really quick before we wrap up here because I'm running out of
Yeah,
time. I had kind of a cool idea of something I wanted you to try. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
hmm
In
sure.
in Buddhism we have this notion of like a near enemy and far enemy of certain
hmm
like things, right? Would
hmm
you say that like could we use that with Shuhari? Like, do you think that the each of these phases maybe have a near enemy and
Okay,
a
let's
far
try.
enemy?
Let's try. Yeah, so like the near enemy is like, for example, equanimity.
Yeah.
The near enemy of equanimity is indifference.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's not really equanimity. You're just emotionally like
Off.
bordered up, and you don't, so you don't really, you have no, you're not touched by anything. But it's not
Yeah.
equanimity. It's not the same thing. Equanimity, you're fully impacted by life. You just don't go up and down with the roller coaster. You're just feeling it
Yes.
fully. the great, all the heaven and the hell of life. You take it all in, but you're just balanced.
It's
It's a
like
highly,
all the
highly
psychological stuff in equanimity is still happening. You just don't react to it the same way.
right. All right, so it's basically the shadow of each stage, yeah, or the
Yeah,
fixation of each stage.
yeah.
So let me Shu-ha-ri. The shadow or the near enemy of Shu would be fascism, I would guess.
Right? Like
Something
extreme conformity, like not being ever able to let go of it and it consuming your identity.
it consuming your identity. So the forms become the most sacred thing, or the most precious thing, and
Almost
nobody's
like
allowed to.
idolatry of the forms too, right? Like
Well, there you go. First, what was it? Is that the first command? I don't know the
I
Ten
can't remember.
Commandments,
Yeah, I'm
but
not
one of
so
them, yeah,
well versed in
exactly. Yeah,
the
you're putting the form into the place of the divine,
Yeah.
and you're not. And by the way, everything, capitalism can be like that.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
forms of communism has fallen again and again like that.
Totally.
And whatever, there's it's just the forms become more important than the individuals.
Yeah.
Basically, I guess the best way to say the form becomes more important than the truth.
I think I think also like forms being more important than our humanity is also another way to look at it, right? Is that you start sacrificing human elements of what you're doing and empathetic elements to favor the form.
Yeah. So whereas conformity is the virtue of Shu, the vice would be, oh, I know there's a word for it. Our listeners are probably already shouting it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
The chat's going
um,
crazy. I mean,
the
honestly, I
vi
think fascism is almost a good.
Yeah, fashion's
It's
pretty
a
extreme
little
though. There's got to
loaded,
be something.
but
There's got to be something. There's something judgmental and almost like a policing of forms, something like that. So let's say fascism. Fascism
yeah,
would be the because fascists would be convinced. And let's just forget politics right now.
yeah, yeah,
We can talk
totally.
about that a lot.
No,
But just
it's
in the
a
martial arts world, if they're fascist or purists,
yeah,
a purist, like a style purist, or it's almost, you know what? Every cult is stuck in the shoe stage.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah,
thinking
totally.
there's a cult energy to it
Yeah,
where and you get some good juice from following that form, but there's no individuality, there's no freedom. So yeah, it closes all that down. So that would be the near enemy of Shu. Ha, the near enemy of Ha, I'm thinking would be overcomplication,
mm,
an overcomplication of things, like what is it? What's the Latin term? Ad absurdum.
yes, 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 yeah, 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 yeah.
Is that right? Ad
I
absurdum?
think
I'm
so.
gonna have
Yeah,
to look
yeah,
it
yeah.
up.
Like
Yeah.
it's
It's just ridiculous. It never st You're just nonstop breaking it down and you're splitting the hair. You're splitting the
mhm.
hair again and again and again and again and again. And there's something interesting to that, but that's not a fractal. This is like
Yes.
you just keep going.
You actually see this
So
people getting lost in the technical aspect of jujitsu, whether it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu or even the jiu-jitsu elements of something like Aikido, right? Like they're lost in the technical element and not realizing that like there's things that transcend that like skill or aiki, right? There's things that go beyond just the physical manipulations and allow you to do these higher skills. So I think that's a great way to put it, like kind of almost getting lost in the
yeah,
weeds of the
it's fun.
application.
Yeah, it's funny because what popped into my head is sometimes historians in the martial arts, particularly in Aikido, because I'm an Aikido guy, they'll start going, you'll say you'll make a claim, whatever. And they go, well, oh sensei, when he was in Manchuria and this and that and and he's going on and on and on and on and on and on. And maybe they have some because they speak Japanese, they have some insight, but it's like they're just doing it to prove a point.
Yes.
Should have humility. Fascists are not humble. Ha
Yeah.
should have humility, but overcomplicating things, there's no humility there either.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And Re, if we talk about a near enemy of Re is transcendence. I would guess that you hang out at the top of the mountain. you don't come back to the marketplace. That would
Kind of
be the
like
near enemy.
the non-bodhisattva, right? Like
There you go. Exactly. I
you're
was just
like,
thinking there's
yeah,
no compassion.
you're like, I'm not
It's like,
coming back.
okay, I did it and good luck, guys. There's no compassion to help
See you,
others.
losers.
Not that it's fine to not help others if that's your thing. But
Yeah.
usually when we've transcended something, we look back at the poor schmucks that are kind of going through the same stuff that we went through. We're we're moved by compassion to give them a hand.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you don't have to spend 10 years doing that. In fact, it's probably better for your health if you don't spend 10 years doing that. Get this peace and then come on. There's like my teacher told me, my meditation teacher told me, the peak experiences in Vipassana meditation happen at the beginning of the middle stages.
Mm,
It's you're just entering intermediate territory, but it's very common for people to think that they're enlightened because they're
yeah.
really, really far out experiences.
Yeah.
And I was going through that stage at one point, and I was on the moon. I was having all these. Won't even get into what I was going through, but my teacher looked at me. He says, you got good, 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 good. He says, it just gets better. It just gets
Yeah.
better. It gets better. Keep going, man. Keep going. Basically, he was saying, don't become attached to this. Just keep
Yeah.
doing your practice. Keep doing the technique. You'll move through that phase. The peak experiences will fade, and you'll be at a certain point. You'll get into hard stuff again. But don't worry, it gets better.
When you
It
get
gets
the
better.
really
It
when you get
gets
the
better.
really like juicy teachings, the really good, the real stuff, the best stuff, right? It's like it's so strong and so effective
It's
that a
so
lot of
strong.
times
Yeah.
you get like 1% of it and it puts you head and shoulders above everybody else. And a lot of people get that 1 or 2% and they run out and become a teacher. And they actually do have 1 or 2% to show everybody, but they missed 98% by running out the door before they really got the rest.
The metaphor of climbing the mountain, the mountain peak is the goal.
Yeah,
Whatever the pinnacle of martial arts, it's the peak of a mountain. If you get 1 or 2%, basically the best you can do is you can teach somebody to go halfway up the mountain.
exactly.
What the fuck are we doing, man? What the fuck? I
Yeah.
mean, if you're teaching bowling or kite making or something like that, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if we're really going to ask people to invest their heart and souls, and not only their heart and soul, we're actually helping people change their karma.
Yeah.
If that's the way you look at it, then um,
You
halfway up
got
the
to do the
mountain is
work. Yeah.
halfway up the mountain is it's okay. But if I'm halfway up the mountain, all I can do is teach somebody halfway up the mountain.
Yeah.
Unless I have theory and understanding, students can pass the teacher.
Yes.
And if that's happening, God, you and I it should be the happiest day of our life
Yeah. Yeah.
if
I
it's
mean,
really happening.
that's like the most special thing. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that's, I guess for me, my experience with the phase is there's this just really powerful generative desire and sense to share what's been gained, right? Like it's like almost existing at a differential with reality. Like it just wants to come out, And I think that part of that also is wanting to climb higher. Is like you're like, no, I got to keep going because on the off chance that one of these people just suddenly starts running up the mountain after me, I have to be ready for that and how to kind of guide them and potentially even push them further than I'm going.
Exactly. Exactly.
Man, thank you
And
so
that's
much for doing this. This has been phenomenal.
well, it's been a pretty high level conversation, so I appreciate it too. You can see that it's been cooking in you for a while now. So we kind of hit the ground running, and here we are. What did we? An hour and a half later, and like time didn't pass at all.
Yeah. Well,
So there's much more. If you ever want to go into it again, let me know. Yeah,
I
we can
think,
apply
yeah,
it
no,
all
I
kinds
think
of
we'll
ways.
have to come back and kind of touch on this stuff again. And I think I think there were a few more things that we touched on, even, taking some time to talk about your meditation training experience a little more. I think I'd also love to dive into that. So I definitely
Awesome.
think a third episode is in the works. And man,
Well,
just
by the way,
yeah,
fractal. We didn't come back to
yes.
fractal.
Yeah,
That could be
let's
the
touch
next
on
thing we
that.
talk about. We could talk
Yeah.
about it next time. But it's basically when you go through all three Shu-ha-ri, when you go back to Shu, you're seeing Shu as a fractal at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother story. In fact, I can, when I'm the teacher is the best learner in the room, basically. If I'm working with somebody at the shoe stage, a beginner comes in, you know how many beginners I've taught in the last 40 years? Come on.
Yeah.
It's and I'm not bored. It's like I know exactly where they're at. I see them, and every time I'm with them, I'm learning
I'm
something
still
new.
learning how to teach
I'm
beginners,
learning
man.
something new.
I
And it's
I
a whole
learn new
fractal
stuff.
here.
Like I learn new things
Yeah,
teaching these beginners, and
yeah,
I'll discover something new. I go, oh my God, for 10 years I've been saying this way.
yeah,
I
yeah.
changed this one word, and all of a sudden everyone can do it on the first try.
Because you see it as, yeah, you're seeing it as a fractal now. So
Yeah,
that you go back to Shu, and it's just there's a dimensionality to it that people that are there are seeing it in one or two dimensions, but we're seeing it in several dimensions.
it's
So
fascinating.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
James,
I mean, this has just
is it
been,
Jamie or is it James?
most people call me Jamie, but my actual
Yeah,
name
because
is James.
yeah, you said
Yeah,
Jamie
yeah.
before, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Most
cool.
people call me Jamie, but
All right, man.
thank you
So
so much.
until next time.
Let's do it again.
All right, brother. Take care. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.